and the People's Union for Civil Liberties. India ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೊದಲು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಐಲಾಜ್ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೆಕ್ರೆಟರಿ ಗಿಫ್ಟನ್ ಅವರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾ ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸಹ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಂತರ PUC ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಮಿಹಿರ್ ದೇಸಾಯಿ ಅವರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಮಿಹಿರ್ will be speaking about how the entire judicial system seems to be rigged against political prisoners and against dissent. And after that, we will have different people reading from Saibaba's writings and his poetry. And if any of you want to read anything which Professor Saibaba has written or a poem dedicated to him, please contact me. I'll be there at the site, or you can just message me. You can also come and read. And after that, we will close the event. And in between, we will also have some songs. So, without further ado, I request the National Secretary of ILAS to please come and take the start.
The mic not working.
I don't switch for that.
It's working.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. It's really quite a difficult situation, actually unimaginable difficulty. When you first sitting in this room, for many years, part of the entire struggle to keep the political prisoners across the world. Yes, sir, it's really unimaginable standing here today to remember Professor Saibaba. And I think many people here have been part of several protests, campaigns, demanding that not just Professor Saibaba, but scores of other political prisoners who are languishing in jail, for them to be released. In fact, in March of this year, we all heaved a collective sigh of relief when Professor Saibaba was finally acquitted. And of course, when he got acquitted by the High Court, the fear we had in our minds was that, will the Supreme Court stay that acquittal the very next day, like it did previously in 2022? Luckily, this time it didn't happen and he came out. But I think within 6-7 months, he was out in March of this year. Within 6-7 months, we are here now, remembering him for the kind of person he was and for the kinds of things that he did. And the blood of Professor Saibaba is on the hands of this regime. It's on the hands of this fascist regime. I think there is no escaping that fact. While I was just thinking, how does one talk about Professor Saibaba? I think many of us here have not met him. We know of him from the various campaigns. We've read certain parts, things that he's done. Many people have also read his poetry. In fact, a lot of people have actually read his poetry. But as a political activist for many years, people like Professor Saibaba are someone you always looked up to. And if you look back at his life, the kind of person he was, the kind of personal struggles that he had, his disability was not just it was a 90% disability, which affected his mobility in a very big way. But if you look at the kind of work that he did, from the time that he was a student in Hyderabad University, standing by the Adivasis, even at that point in time, as they faced the wrath of the state, the Adivasi resistance was something that was always a thorn in the side for the state. But even despite his disabilities, he traveled to various states, visiting them, preparing reports, and constantly articulating about their rights. We also remember him as a professor of English. In fact, I think Meena Kandaswamy put it very beautifully the other day when she spoke in Hyderabad. She said, while we remember him as a political activist, somebody who put himself out there for Adivasis, against this entire corporate loot, against Operation Green Hunt, which massacred Adivasis by the hundreds. He was also a professor all the while, influencing, engaging with students, talking to them about the real issues that this country was facing. And she said that it's really a very sorry commentary that the educational institutions, professors, etc., have really not come out in the way that they should. And she said that for her, she was saying that this actually represents the capture, the Savarna Brahmanical kind of capture of educational institutions that we're seeing today. But we definitely remember him as that. We also remember him as a poet. And I've read his poetry. And I was just talking to Arvind the other day. Somebody who's a real big inspiration for us also has been Hikmat. And you'll find Hikmat actually referenced in Professor Saibaba's poetry. It's very curious though. Just a few days back, Professor Saibaba was asked about his poetry, and he had this to say as to why he chose poetry as such a important medium for himself. And he said that at first, I felt anger at how unjustly I was treated in prison. But then I met others. People who were incarcerated for stealing food, a man dying in front of me, people who were charged for crimes of necessity. To translate all that and to explain it, only poetry sufficed as a medium. This is beautiful in the way I think he explains even why poetry was important too. And I mean, there's so much to say about the kind of work that he did, even when he was a student, in terms of the revolutionary activities, part of various organizations that he was in Andhra. One of the things that really struck me was the struggles that he took also for students while he was in in Delhi University. So, for instance, this entire thing of reservations for Dalit, Adivasi, and OBC students. There's some struggle that was really at the forefront of. So, you look at him and you see a life of activism, a life dedicated to realizing people's dreams, a life dedicated to building a society where there is no oppression in the sense of the word. And I would imagine that one of the tributes we could pay to him is to salute that vision that he had for society, that determination that he had to go through his entire life. I want to also just talk to you a little bit about this case. I mean, as a lawyer, this is something that we've been following as well for some time. And if you remember, Sai Baba was arrested in May of 2014. A lot of people don't call that an arrest. They call it that he was abducted, literally. He was just picked up and no one knew where he was. And then finally you see that he's been produced before a court. I think that was in Gadchiroli. So after being arrested in May of 2014, all of us were trying to understand what's this case against him. Like BK16, there were anything and everything that was floating around. The High Court, when it acquitted Professor Sai Baba this year, summarizes the entire case that the police had, that the state had against Sai Baba in just one paragraph. I'd like to read that out to you, just for you to get a sense of how easy it is for this state to throw somebody into prison. So this is at para 69 of that judgment. So the court says, in a nutshell, the prosecution alleges that accused number 6, GN Saibab, sent some secret messages stored in the 16 GB memory card related to the banned terrorist organization CPI Maoist and its frontal organization RBF. RBF is the Revolutionary Democratic Front. The secret messenger was accused number 3, Hem Mishra. One Naxalite lady named Narmadakka had sent accused number 1, Mahesh Tirki, and accused number 2, Pandu Narote, to receive accused number 3, Hem Mishra at Aheri bus stand. However, on the basis of the intelligence inputs, all 3 were apprehended on 22/8/2013, followed by the seizure of incriminating material from their possession. This is the sum and substance of the case that was laid against Sai Baba. So they seized some documents, they seized so-called Maoist literature, they seized some pamphlets, they seized a lot of the electronic his laptops, etc. And if you read that judgment, it's such an indication of the very illegal incarceration that Sai Baba faced. The court comes to hold that there was no sanction under UAPA, that whatever safeguards, whatever procedures were there under UAPA were not followed, and even the arrest even is the so-called seizure of incriminating materials from him, none of it stands. And on the basis of that, he gets acquitted. Of course, if you remember, he was acquitted once before, which is really quite remarkable. So the trial court convicts Professor Sai Baba on March of 2017. This was challenged by them in the High Court. The High Court on 14th October of 2022 sets aside the acquittal on the single ground that the sanction that is mandatory under UAP was not sought. We'll all remember this as one of, now it's really very tough to say that this is the blackest day in the Indian judiciary. Every day it seems like, the clouds just keep looming more and more. But on 15th of October, on a Saturday, a special bench was constituted, and that special bench stays the acquittal order and stays the release of Professor Sai Baba from prison. This has never happened. One could have heard of, of court sitting on a non-sitting day to protect the civil liberties of someone. But to sit in such an urgent fashion to ensure that someone stays in jail, that is something that is unprecedented. And that's what the judiciary did here. So even on 5th of March of this year, when Professor Sai Baba was acquitted, all of us, we had literally this lump in our throats. What is the Supreme Court going to do next? Is the Supreme Court again going to stay this order? And luckily for us, on this occasion, the Supreme Court did not do it. There's just few more points that I wanted to just say and end with that. What is it that has really brought us here? If you remember, Professor Sai Baba was arrested at a time when the UPA, the Congress, was in power. Several of us, I remember many years ago when Professor Vinayak Sen was arrested in Chhattisgarh, we had these huge protests in Bangalore demanding his release, and that was something that you saw across the country. That too was something that happened under UAPA. So I think the Congress and the Congress especially, it cannot escape its role and its responsibility in what has happened to Professor Sai Baba. And in that sense, the first nail, his coffin, was actually by the Congress. In fact, UAPA as it stands today, the draconian nature of the UAPA as it stands today, were amendments that were brought in by the UAPA 1. And that is something that we can't forget. But I still would say that there is something different that has happened over the last 10 years. And that is something that I would like to just, briefly talk about. One is Professor Sai Baba is not the only person who was in jail for all these years. Even as we speak, you have hundreds and hundreds of political activists who are still in jail. And one of the things that the BJP has done since coming to power is this weaponization of draconian laws. So if UAP was being used even by the previous regimes, post the BJP coming to power, you see like a high increase in how UAP is invoked against anyone. And like I told you, you can see how flimsy the case against Sai Baba was. It was just on those allegations, you invoke the provisions of the UAPA, and somebody spends 10 years of their life in prison. So this weaponization of draconian laws is something that's very remarkable and very markedly different of this regime that we need to keep in mind. The second is this entire discourse of this urban accent, Tukade gang, anti-national, etc., etc. For the past decade, this has been repeated ad nauseam. You had the media houses repeating it to such an extent that anyone who speaks against any kind of dissent, and this is not just some revolutionary party or some in the forest that is opposing it, could be any resistance, any political dissent is now being clamped down upon. Any political dissent is now something that is unacceptable. It is not good for the progress of the state. So this normalization of this discourse has also meant that the horrors that political prisoners go through in prison is also normalized. It is part and parcel of the entire project. The third thing that we have is the indiscriminate criminalization of dissent and opposition. And here, you have chief ministers, Arvind Kejriwal, Hemant Soren will be languishing in jail, and then you'll have political activists who continue to remain in jail. The fourth, and I think this is something that we really can't ignore anymore, is a pliable judiciary that has actually aided and abetted in this process. So if two judges of the Supreme Court sit on a Saturday and think nothing about suspending staying the acquittal of a person who's been in jail for so many years. That's just remarkable, the kind of message that the judiciary has sent. And repeatedly bail applications being denied. We know the cases of Umar, for instance, even Sarji, Gulfi, where the cases are adjourned dozens and dozens of times. Bail applications adjourned. Whereas the Supreme Court will sing pains about, how civil liberties is so important. Court should dispose of bail applications as expeditiously as possible. But when it comes to political prisoners, all of this lies suspended. And the judiciary cannot be but blamed for the role that it's had to play. The other is, of course, the kind of treatment and torture that happens in prison. Here, I must remind you that this is not the first killing of a political prisoner that has happened. We remember Father Stan Swami. We remember Pandu Norate. In fact, Pandu Norate was also accused along with Professor Saibab in the very same case. And he died while he was in prison. And before him, Kanchan Nanavare, who was again accused of being a mouse, she dies in prison. And you look at the stories of all four, and you'll realize that it's gross neglect. In fact, you could say wanton neglect that has led to the deaths of these people. I'm not even talking about the other deaths. On an average, there are around 2,000 deaths that take place in the prisons of India at this point in time. Many of them are unnatural. You really don't know exactly what goes down there. But basically, prison has become this space where you can deny a Father Stan Swami a sipper, and it's perfectly fine. And this thing that, in fact, Professor Saibaba says, that when he used to request that I need medical treatment, the way he was treated, I'll just say this, something that he said in Hyderabad. He says that they didn't even give me the medicines I needed. They gave me sleeping pills, drugged me continuously, and gave me diclofenac for pain. My left arm was broken in the rough handling during my arrest, and that affected my spine and nervous system. So if you say that he died after that, it wasn't that surgery that he did. It's 10 years of torture that he went through in that prison that culminated in the death of Professor Saibaba. And now, do we call this an institutional murder? A friend of mine was saying the other day, that's really a misnomer. The institutions themselves have been murdered. There are no democratic institutions left. So where is the institutional murder that you're talking about? This is state murder that you're talking about. And that is what we see when we're talking about Professor Saibaba. I'd like to just end by making 2-3 points. Each of these points that I elaborated on, I think that should be part of our struggles here on. And that, I would imagine, is the best tribute that we can pay to Professor Saibaba. Today, when the state and all constitutional institutions are conflated with a single political party, there could be no surer sign that we are going through fascism. The electoral loss that the BJP has suffered, notwithstanding, still the challenge remains for all of us, and we need to use this. And we need to use this opportunity to ensure that we fight for the repeal of these draconian laws, to ensure that we fight for the release of all political prisoners. We fight to ensure that democratic dissent and resistance will not be clamped. I'd like to end with this short poem. We had a tussle, Arvind and myself. This is one of our favorite poems. And this is something that really, for me, Hikmat is somebody who gives you a lot of strength in times of challenge. Now it seems like times of challenge are every second. So Nazim Hikmat was this famous Turkish poet, revolutionary poet, who spent more than 13 years in jail for the kind of opposition that he had to that system. So this is one of the poems that he writes. It's called On Living. I'm just going to read one verse to you. Living is no laughing matter. You must take it seriously. So much so, and to such a degree, that, for example, your hands tied behind your back to the wall, or else in the laboratory, in your white coat and safety glasses. You can die for me. Even for people whose faces you've never seen. Even though living is the most real, the most beautiful. I think that's the life that we really need to aspire for. That's the life that Professor Saibaba led. We definitely will never forget Professor Saibaba, and we have to take this struggle ahead. Inqilab Zindabad. Thank you. I think Professor Is Mihir going to speak now?
Yeah. Thank you, Clifton. And we'll now have Mr. Mihir Desai speak. He'll be addressing us via Zoom because he's not in Bombay. He's a senior advocate who's been practicing in the Bombay Court and in the Supreme Court. He's represented many of the political prisoners in the PK16 case, many of the big and other political prisoners. He's also been representing several workers' movements and has been litigating on important issues of constitutional rights. He's also the national vice president of the People's Union for Civil Liberties. Aish? After Mihir Desai speaks, we'll have
Can you hear us, Mihir?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
What about now? Can you speak now?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Just 1 second, 1 second.
Yeah, yeah.
Check.
Mihir, can you say something?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
1 second. You don't know what. Yes.
Indian figure. Here, this panel only, right?
Yeah, he's audible to the ones on Zoom, but the projector and sound system is not connected properly. Sorry, just please give us 1 more minute. We'll try to figure this out.
Can you see me?
We can see you, we can hear you also, but it's not connected to the sound system.
Okay, okay.
Can you
All
put it
right.
underneath?
Okay.
Shri Lakshmi, can you mute the microphone? Lakshmi,
Mihir, what about now?
mute the microphone.
Can you try?
Now I can always hear you. Can you hear me? That's
Sorry, we're just testing. Just one more.
okay.
Oh, okay. We're holding a hand mic to the speaker. So, yeah, we can all hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
What about now?
No, I can, as I told you, I have been hearing all the murmurs which are going on there, but can you hear me? That's the question.
Okay, Mihir, we can go ahead.
Yeah, we can.
No, this is also
I switched it off right now.
this is not working. We don't.
Why don't you repeat what I say to the audience?
The technician is calm. Just give us 1 minute.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hit the equipment like that? So we get it. This is the laptop. This is the cord that it has, and this is
Only for few seconds. The green mic got connected. When I connected this.
So network bandwidth.
Amir, can you say something, please?
And you drop off from the bandwidth.
Wi-Fi correct na?
There was a second.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಈ ವೈಫೈ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದಾ? ಹಾ. Okay, done. Okay. It's still showing bandwidth low. Okay. Mihir, can you try speaking now? Is it connected, sir?
Yeah, can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you.
Okay.
1 ನಿಮಿಷ.
Speakers.
ಫೋನ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. Sorry, Mihir, one more test. Is there volume? Mihir? Turn on the video so we can see how it is. Mihir, one more test. Can you say something? Can you hear us?
Can you say hi? ಹೀಗೆ ಹಾ. One second. Sound output ಬೇರೆ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡೋಣ. Mihir, are you on mute right now?
No. No. Can you hear me? You can't.
ಒಂದೇ ನಿಮಿಷ. Hello. No. Should we just
Hi.
connect it?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Connection ಇಲ್ಲ sir, disconnection ಇದೆ. ಏನ್ problem ಇದೆ? ಈ speaker? Sorry, Mihir. Sorry, everyone.
So can you speak once?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Not yet? You can? Oh, for once.
Please continue, Mihir.
Can I mean, continue in the sense I start talking or I continue in terms?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So should I start? You can hear me, I guess. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, guys. Okay, sorry. I should have been there amongst all of you, but being the last working day, I couldn't be there. In which case, all these problems would have been avoided. But anyway, we go on. There is another apology I have to make to all of you. You see, when Aishwarya talked to me yesterday, and I was asking her what I should talk about, which aspect should I focus on. We had slight bit of discussion, but I was confused at the end of the day. So I spent about 2-3 hours, as is customary nowadays. I went to the deity and asked the deity as to what should I speak. Please give me, please tell me what to speak, because you seem to be quite popular nowadays. But deity told me I am not one of the chosen few, so the deity did not help me. So whatever I say today, whatever mistakes I make, whatever wrong things I say are entirely my own, and please don't blame it on the deity. Okay, that's the second thing which I wanted to say. I also wanted to, I mean, we are today meeting obviously because of Sai Baba's demise, the unfortunate demise of Sai Baba. I had spoken to him about, soon after he got released from the prison, we had a telephonic conversation. And when he was in prison, I was at times handling his medical bail in Nagpur. So at that time, we had some video calls and video talks and all that. So that was, unfortunately, after his release, I couldn't meet him. But obviously, he was in great spirits, looking forward to the rest of his long life, which he expected, which all of us expected. The reason why I'm saying this is that when in 2018, when I had gone to handle his medical bail in Nagpur, I had gone to handle the medical bail. Surendra had said, Surendra Gadling, lawyer, had said that, why don't you come and argue this matter? So I had said, okay, fine. And then we were supposed to have a meeting. Then I land up in Nagpur and I come to know that on the previous day, Surendra himself has been arrested in the famous DK16 case, Bhima Koregaon case. So he himself was arrested. At that time, I went through his medical papers, Sai Baba's medical papers in detail to argue the matter. And what happened was that even at that time, that is about 6 years back, one of the things which he needed very urgently was a gallbladder stone operation, which finally happened after 6 years, and which the complications from that resulted in his death. Even at that time, as we all know, he was 90% disabled. Of course, when he entered the jail, when he entered the prison in 2014, he had he had polio, yes, and so he couldn't walk on his own. But otherwise, he didn't have any major ailments. It was during his tenure in jail that many major ailments he suffered, including complete loss of the use of his left hand. That was because the police pulled him. We used to pull him very badly, etc. He had a cyst in the brain. He had heart problem. So he had multiple, and he had some multiple other problems also, which I need not go into. But he had multiple problems by the time he came out of the prison. At one point of time, his medical bail was rejected by the Nagpur bench. Then the Bombay High Court took over the case of medical bail alone on the basis of a letter written by a social activist from Nagpur. This happened in 2017. And at that time, his bail was granted for 3 months, medical bail, which was further extended for 3 more months. The Nagpur judge got very upset with the Bombay High Court having taken up this matter because it pertained to the Nagpur bench. We have 4 benches in Bombay High Court, some of you might know. So it pertained to the Nagpur bench. So he got upset, the judge, and cancelled the bail, medical bail. So he had to again undergo, go back to prison. That was the same time, in the same judgment, the court also issued contempt notice against Arundhati Roy for having criticized the judge, court, prison, and the state authorities, saying, how can you criticize state authorities, etc. Contempt notices were issued against Arundhati Roy for having written this. But this was the situation. What I want to do briefly is look at 3 or 4 cases and try to actually show how UAPA has been misused or used, whichever way one wants to look at it, in order to target dissent of all kinds. Dissent of trade unionists, dissent of human rights activists, dissent from lawyers, dissent from poets, cultural activists, tribal rights activists, democratic rights activists, you take whatever you want, student activists. So how it has been used? Just to give a broad idea, that in 2022, when the last government figures are available, according to the official government reports, 1,005 new cases were registered under UAPA across the country. 1,005. Okay. UP had 101, Manipur had 167, JNK had 371, Karnataka had 4, and in 2021 there were 796, 2022 814, 2022 1005. Okay. So this is the situation as far as the UAPA cases are concerned. And then data available about various other cases. Even this data, okay, this is the data from the National Crime Bureau. This data itself is something which is very debatable. And they're debatable because what they do is, when they give you a data about under which act somebody has been arrested, they give you the data on the basis of the major offense. So suppose you are arrested for waging war against the government, which is 121 of the IPC at that time, and under UAPA, and the punishment for waging war is higher than what is for UAPA, then that offense will not be shown as an offense under UAPA, but an offense as statistically will be shown as offense under this thing, what do you call it, waging war. So you won't know it is also registered under UAPA. So that was, but these are broad statistics. Between 2015 and 20, totally overall, there were 5,924 cases, and 8,371 people were arrested. That is the situation. The conviction rate overall, the conviction rate in respect of trials which actually culminated was 27.57%, while in normal crimes it was during that period 50%. Now, this 27.57% is also very interesting. The reason why it is interesting is in many of the cases which we studied, we found that after a person spends about 8-9 years in jail, the prosecution tells him that, look, if you admit to your crime, we will tell the court to release you. Okay. The poor guy feels that he'll be inside for another 4-5 years before the trial ends, so he admits to the crime. That is shown as a conviction. And that's how the conviction rate goes up. Okay. This has happened in a lot of cases. So this is the other thing which we have to bear in mind. Looking at broadly how, just 2 or 3 examples of how UAPA has happened. Now, there was a person called Bashir Ahmed, a Kashmiri person, who was arrested when he had gone to Gujarat for a post-cancer cure workshop. He was arrested, and after 11 years and 3 months in jail, he was acquitted. They didn't find anything against him after 11 years and 3 months. Similarly, in April 17, 121 tribals in Chhattisgarh were arrested. In June 22, after about 5 years, they were all acquitted and released. So you have a situation where people spend years and years and years together in court, and that's basically the purpose of UAPA. See, the purpose of UAPA is not to convict. I mean, if it happens, fine. If it doesn't happen, fine. Purpose is to keep people behind bars for a long period of time. And the problem with UAPA, about 4 or 5 problems I'll just broadly mention. One is there is an increase. I mean, unlike the normal criminal law, here the detention period and the time given to the police to file charge sheet are more than what is under the normal law. So the detention in the police custody and the time for filing charge sheet are longer. Second, there is no provision for anticipatory bail in UAPA. Third, bail provisions are made much more stringent. Much more stringent. The court has to come to a prima facie finding that he is not guilty, that the accused is not guilty. At the stage of bail, the court has to give the prima facie finding. And this finding, the court can give, unfortunately, because of a Supreme Court judgment called Vatali. Okay, this finding the court can give only on the basis of what is in the case diary of the police and what is in the charge sheet. The court cannot look beyond the charge sheet. Court cannot look beyond the case diary. Now, because of that, if I have a defense, if I have a good defense, if I am the accused, that won't be looked at the stage of bail. So the court will have to go by the police version, and unless you are able to point out loopholes in those versions, you will be denied bail. Yeah, that's the other thing. There is also a provision which says that the names of the witnesses and addresses of the witnesses, some of the witnesses can be withheld from you until the trial starts, can be withheld from you. So the police can come with any kind of witness statements and put it to you and say that, look, or put it to the court saying that, look, this witness has said so-and-so about this man. Now, I don't know who that witness is. There is no way in which I can contradict that witness. And that will be used to deny me bail. That has happened in a number of cases to deny people bail. And there is also a provision of presumption of guilt in certain cases. I'll come to that when I'm discussing Saibaba's case, because I just wanted to discuss a little more. Clifton very pithily mentioned about the case. I just want to go a little bit more, because Saibaba's case, if one looks at it, Saibaba's case is one case which has gone from Sessions Court to High Court. The trial is over. The appeal in the High Court is over. Once it went also up to Supreme Court. And it gives you a good idea. Saibaba's case itself gives you a good idea of how the law is misused. We all know that the law is used to crush dissent. It's one of the laws in the armory of the state, okay, to crush dissent. They use sedition. They use waging war. Nowadays, they have started using waging war. They use PMLA. They use I mean, I don't know whether, I mean, there was one other case which was very interesting, which gives us some light into this whole thing. If you know Siddiq Kappan, who was in October 20, he was a journalist from Kerala, writing regularly, routinely columns in Malayalam papers. In October 20, he was on way to Hathras. Hathras is where the gruesome rape had happened of a Dalit girl. Okay, he was on his way to Hathras. He was arrested. He was arrested, and charges under UAPA were slapped against him. He was a journalist. Okay? He and three others were arrested, okay, by the UP police. Charges under UAPA. His situation was very, very bad. His physical condition was very bad. He got COVID twice. He was not being given. He was denied bail repeatedly, including by the Supreme Court. Not he had COVID. There was no material whatsoever against Siddiq Kappan. No material whatsoever. Only thing they said is that this man, okay, is trying to incite violence, okay, by talking about this Dalit girl's rape to various audiences or by writing about it. Okay. In normal circumstances, such a case would have been thrown out in a minute, but no. He continued to be in jail. He continued to be in jail. After about he got COVID twice. His bail was rejected even by Supreme Court. Supreme Court, of course, said that okay, we are rejecting his bail, but he should be treated in a Delhi hospital. He was brought to Delhi hospital for treatment. Finally, on 8th September 22, that is nearly 2 years after his release, 2 years after his arrest, he was released from. He was granted bail by the Supreme Court. High Court has rejected, Sessions Court has rejected. Finally, the Supreme Court granted him bail on 8th September 22. But the problem for him was that there was another case against him in respect of the same thing under the PMLA, that is Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So he continued to be in jail. Okay. After having been granted bail by the Supreme Court, he continued to be in jail because there was a PMLA case slapped against him in UP. And what was a PMLA case? PMLA case was that some 1 crore rupees was received by some person somewhere in Kerala, and they had transferred that money to Siddiq Kappan and his colleague. Now, when the bank accounts were taken and checked, the only transaction was that person had transferred 5,000 rupees to the co-accused of Siddiq Kappan, not even to Siddiq Kappan. No transactions as far as Siddiq Kappan is concerned. Co-accused of Siddiq Kappan. On this basis, a PMLA charge was raised against Siddiq Kappan. Finally, luckily for him, on 23rd December 22, even in the PMLA case, he was granted bail. So here was a case of a journalist who was in jail for more than 2 years on completely trumped up charges. In the meanwhile, what had happened was the Kerala Union of Journalists had filed a habeas corpus petition in Supreme Court immediately after his arrest. That case was adjourned on 9 occasions. Nothing happened in that case. Okay. Finally, the bail was granted in the other case, which the regular bail thing. But here, nothing happened. So this is the way in which UAPA gets used to keep people behind bars. Same thing. If you see what happened to Akhil Gogoi. Okay? Akhil Gogoi is an MLA from Assam and an activist. He was arrested under UAPA because he protested against CAA and RC. He was arrested under UAPA. After 2 years, 2.5 years, finally he was released, okay, by the Supreme Court again, okay, not by the High Court, not by the Sessions Court. In fact, the Sessions Court discharged him. Okay, Sessions Court discharged him, saying that there is no evidence against him. The High Court turned that aside, that decision. Supreme Court agreed that the decision should be turned aside. Okay, so his discharge was not granted. Well, Supreme Court, the only thing Supreme Court said that since he's on bail because the Sessions Court had turned aside his had given him discharge, let him be on bail, let him not be arrested again. So that is what happened. But again, Akhil Gogoi, a very prominent person, was in jail for a long time. Similar thing, if we see what has happened in the Delhi riots case and Umar Khalid, it's crazy in the sense if you see the Delhi riots case. February 20, the riots take place. The allegation against Umar Khalid was that in 2019 December, he, Yogendra Yadav, and two other people met at some place. Okay. This is just before the act came in, the CAA act came in. So they met at some place. They met at that place. They had discussions. What discussions, no one knows. It's not tape record or anything of that kind. Okay. This was shown as a conspiracy. Okay. This was shown as a conspiracy. On the basis of this conspiracy, he is charged and he's arrested in September 2020. Many other people have been charged under UAPA. There is this infamous FIR called FIR 59 of 2020. There are there are more than 100 FIRs which are filed during the Delhi agitation and riots in 2020. But this is the infamous FIR when UAPA was brought in, 59, under which 18 people were arrested, out of which 12 are still in jail, 6 are out, including Devangana and the other people who got bail. And that is another problem with the way which courts function. Okay. Devangana, Asif Tana and others and one other had got bail from the Delhi High Court in a very damning judgment against the prosecution, saying that these people, there is no question of UAPA and all being invoked against these people. They are not rioters. They are not terrorists. You can't invoke this provision of terrorism against them. And then the court had granted them bail, saying that the invocation of this anti-terror law against all these people who had participated in protests is completely wrong and should be done away with. Fortunately, unlike what happened to Sai Baba in the earlier round of his litigation, which went to Supreme Court, here they were released on bail. I mean, they were out. Okay, they were out, and by the time the state went to Supreme Court, they were already out. So the Supreme Court said, now we are not going to tell them, we are not going to re-jail them. We are not saying that they should be taken back. But the Supreme Court made a further observation that none of the observations made by the Delhi High Court judgment will be relied as a precedent by any of the co-accused or anybody else. So therefore, no, I mean, I don't see any logic behind this. If you are upholding the judgment, how can you say that none of the observations should be relied on? If that observation of the Supreme Court had not been there, by now all the others would have been released because their cases are identical. They would have been released, but they are not. For more than 4 years, these 12 people are in jail. On the other hand, about 60 to 70 cases where FIRs where UAPA has not been invoked, those cases have been dismissed by various courts in Delhi, saying that most of the times saying that these are fabricated cases or suggesting to that effect. In fact, they have said that this is some kind of a myth which the prosecution is creating. So most, including Umar Khalid, he has also been released in the other case, but he's in jail because of this case, UAPA case. UAPA case, and look at the situation. Twice his bail has been rejected by the Sessions Court. Once by the High Court. Supreme Court they went, and Supreme Court obviously strategically, when the matter came up before a particular bench, which according to them would never have, and I would agree with them, according to them would never have granted bail, they strategically decide to withdraw because they didn't want a rejection from the Supreme Court. Otherwise, it would have closed all doors. So they withdrew and they went back to the Sessions Court. But look at the situation for 4.5 years. And what is the evidence against him? When the Delhi riots took place, he was not even in Delhi. There are no arms found from him. There is no explosive found. There is no money found. He says Chakka Jam. Now, Chakka Jam is something which it's like saying, calling somebody comrade or saying that Inqilab Zindabad or somebody Murdabad. I had to argue one case in Bombay High Court where somebody said somebody Murdabad, will it amount to sedition? Will it amount to a threat or something like that? I mean, historically, from even pre-British period, even British period, these kind of, because Murdabad, I mean, actually translated means death to so and so. So that doesn't mean you are going and attacking somebody. You are going and you are saying that attack somebody or kill somebody. But anyway, this is what happened. So the next, so Delhi riots case is another case with the same thing is same is a problem. Now I want to just briefly speak about Saibaba's case because I think we are today more concerned about Saibaba's case. Before I do that, I just wanted to add one more thing. And I will not speak about the Bhima Koregaon case because Bhima Koregaon case, everybody has talked about it. I mean, everybody knows about it, so I won't really spend time over it. Though I am much more familiar with that because I was part of that, I am part of that case. But anyway, the point is that as far as one thing about UAPA you must understand, that whatever cases NIA has filed, and nowadays NIA takes over most of these UAPA cases, whatever cases NIA has filed, at least 50% of those cases are under Section 18 of the UAPA. Now, Section 18 of the UAPA is about conspiracy. Sorry, 64% of the cases are under Section 18. Out of them, about 70 to 75%. About 70 to 75% cases, okay, are in respect of conspiracy which does not lead to an event. For instance, and that's the only thing I wanted to give example of, say, what Akhil Gogoi or what our friend Siddiq Kappan. Okay? No event has happened. Okay, no arms are found. No money is recovered. Nothing is, I mean, there is no bomb blast. There is no bullet fired. There is no bullet recovered. There is no RDX recovered. Nothing. Okay? So most of the cases which are filed under UAP in which people are in jail today are cases where nothing has actually happened. No event has happened. No terrorist act has happened. No terrorist activity is planned also in the sense that collection of arms or collection of bombs or something like that, nothing. Or collection of money, large amount of money in order to distribute, nothing is happened. So most of the cases under UAPA today are those cases where nothing has happened. Saibaba's case is one of those cases. Okay, when nothing has happened and you're still in jail for 11 years. Now look at the case against Saibaba. Just very briefly, I wanted to speak about it. Aishwarya, tell me when I overstretch my time so that I can stop. Okay. Yeah. So as far as Saibaba is concerned, just what is the case? And Clifton mentioned it, but I just want to go a little bit more into detail. On 22nd August 2013, the police, the Gadchiroli police, the Maharashtra police, claimed to have arrested 3 people, Mahesh Tirki, Pandu Narote, and Hem Mishra, from a bus stop. Why they arrested him? Because they thought that they were suspiciously talking to each other. Okay. On 22nd August 2013, they arrested him and they took him to the police station. In the police station, they did a search. In the search, they find a pen drive. Okay. A pen drive. In the meanwhile, because of the interrogation of these people, they also arrest Prashant Rahi and Vijay Tirki on 1st September 2013 from another place. They claim to arrest from another place. Prashant Rahi and Vijay Tirki. So 5 people are arrested. After that, they come to realize that actually, or so is their case, that this pen drive is a pen drive given by Saibaba to Hem Mishra, who is arrested, in order to give it to somebody in the forest. That's the sum and substance of the case, as it then was. So they gave it to Hem Mishra, and Hem Mishra was arrested with that pen drive. So they decide to raid Sai Baba's house. So on 7th September 2013, they say raid Sai Baba's house. After raiding Sai Baba's house, they took away his computer, they took away his hard drive, etc., etc., various other things, electronic items, etc. They didn't find any money, they didn't find arms, they didn't find anything else. Yeah. So they take away the computer, hard drive, etc. After 9 months, after 8 months, on 9th May 2014, they actually arrest or kidnap or abduct him, as Clifton also mentioned. So 9th May, they arrest him. 9th May 2014. And then he is in Nagpur jail along with the 5 others who are in jail. Sessions Court gives its order on 7th March 2007, convicting all of them, life imprisonment, and for one person, 10 years, Tirki, 10 years, others, life imprisonment. Then you get the High Court order on 14th October 22, when the High Court acquits all of them on the simple ground that the sanction which is required under UAPA was not obtained or was not legally obtained. That's the ground. And therefore, the entire case collapses, because under UAPA, without a valid sanction, and there is a filter. Normally, if you want to prosecute a government servant or prosecute somebody under 153A, hate speech, you need to get sanction of the police, a sanction of the state authorities or the central authorities. Here, before the state authority grants sanction, there is a committee which has to make a report as to whether they find that UAPA cases are made out or not. On the basis of that report, then the state will decide whether to grant sanction or not, and then sanction is granted. If sanction is not granted, the case collapses. You can't prosecute a person under UAPA. So the High Court said there is no question of this case going ahead. I mean, no question of going into anything else. The sanction itself is bad. Everything collapses. Everybody is let off. That is on 14th October. On 15th October, the special division bench of Justice M.R. Shah and Justice Bela Trivedi sit in the court, okay, on a Saturday, as Clifton again reminded all of us, for the first time in its history, to take away somebody's liberty and not to grant it. They take away the liberty. After a year, on 19th April 2023, the matter is sent back to Nagpur High Court. And finally, on 5th March 24, the Nagpur High Court gives the judgment, acquitting everybody again, a second time. Now, the acquittal happens on 11 grounds. Okay? Earlier, it was only on the ground of sanction. Now, they acquit him on totally 11 grounds. I am not going to bore you with all the grounds, but I'll just tell you broadly what are the grounds on which he's acquitted. First of all, they uphold the first judgment, saying that the sanction under section 45(1) is a bad sanction. The review committee has not applied its mind, and the sanctioning authority has not applied its mind. So the sanction itself is completely bad, because when you are applying, when you are reviewing the matter, you have to go through the material and check whether UAPA is made out. Nothing is made out. The reviewing authority doesn't apply its mind. The sanctioning authority doesn't apply its mind. Matter ends, matter closed. Therefore, the sanction is bad, and therefore the whole thing goes. That's one thing. Second thing they said, which is very important even legally for other things also. See, there is a presumption under the UAPA, okay, that if at the place where the offense takes place, your fingerprints are found, or some arms are found, ammunition is found, then you can be connected to those arms or ammunition or to those fingerprints, or any other material is found which connects you to that. Okay? There is a presumption against you, against the accused. And then the accused will have to show, unlike under the normal law where the prosecution will have to show, the accused will have to show that he was not concerned, he was not involved. The High Court, very remarkably, says that, look, this presumption applies against the accused, applies only in respect of section 15, which is when a terrorist act takes place. It doesn't apply for other sections. Okay? So if a terrorist act has actually taken place, then this presumption may apply. And even then, such a presumption can't apply for pamphlets and all that. Because some pamphlets were seized and all that. It can't apply for. So it says that in this case, there is no offense, there is no place of offense. What place of offense? There is no terrorist act. So you can't say that the burden is on the accused. So that's the second point. The third point which the court said is that the arrest itself of accused number 1 to 3, as well as 4 and 5, was completely bad. The arrest was bad. Why was the arrest and the seizure was bad? Why was the arrest bad? As far as the first 3 people are concerned, Hen Mishra and the 2 others who were arrested, they were arrested on 22nd by the together. They were arrested together. The arrest memo is signed by 3 different police officers claiming to have arrested him. Arrest is shown on the next day. There are interpolation. Arrest is shown on the next day. So the court says that how is this possible? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is a completely illegal arrest. If there is an illegal arrest, there is an illegal seizure. So nothing which is seized can be relied on. That's the point number. Similarly, about 4 and 5, that is Prashant and Tirki, they say the same thing. That because the contention of all these people was that we were never arrested on this day. We were arrested much before from a different place, and we were shown to have been arrested on this day. And the court virtually suggests that what they are saying is correct. Then the last thing, the second last thing was about house search of Sai Baba, because things were found from Sai Baba's house. Okay? Computers were seized, etc. The court says that this house search is completely illegal. Why is it illegal? For 3 reasons. First of all, when the house search was going on, Sai Baba and his family members were asked to stay outside the house. Now, once you are made to stand, you are required to be present when the search is going on. So you know nothing is being planted, etc., etc. But these people were made to stay outside the house, and the search was going on inside. Okay, one thing. Second thing is, police said, no, we took video recording of the search. But they never produced the video recording. In court, trial court, high court, Supreme Court, nowhere they produced the video recording. It disappeared, that video recording. They said, what video recording? And the third thing is that as far as the electronic items which were confiscated, there was no hash value taken. There were no details. I mean, and that's again an important thing which will help in a number of other cases. That when you seize an electronic item, there is a presumption in favor of those items, provided those are secured electronic devices. So secured electronic devices means you have to take certain measurements, certain measures at the time when you seize them, like taking hash value, taking out the detail of the number, serial number of that hard drive which you are seizing. Nothing was done. Okay? Despite the fact that a computer expert had gone with the police. Okay? Nothing was done. So the court said that how can we rely on this kind of search and all that? Finally, and there are various other points, I won't go into it. Finally, the court says that, okay, these are procedural grounds. But even on substance, even on substantive grounds, even on merits, let me assume, that's what the court said, let me assume that what you have claimed to have found from him is actually found from him. Okay? Electronic records, pamphlets, documents which show sympathy with violence, etc., etc. Okay, but let me assume that it's actually found. Even then, it does not amount to any kind of offense under UAPA. I may believe in violence.
Oh, sorry.
I may believe that there should. I may believe tomorrow. I may believe that all Muslims should be killed or something in my mind. Okay, I may read about it. That doesn't make it a UAPA offense unless I act on it. So freedom of conscience is there for everybody. Anybody can believe in whatever they want. I can believe in a deity. Somebody may think that they are not biological children of this of the mother or father. People are free to believe what they want to believe. Okay? But question is, are you acting on it? Okay? So just because you have some sympathy, even if you have sympathy for violence, even if these pamphlets are actually found from your place, which was never proved, they were found, even if they're actually found, there is no UAPA offense committed, and therefore, even on merits, not just on procedural grounds, but even on merits, these people are innocent and they were left free. This is what has happened in Sai Baba's case. It's unfortunate that it so as I told you, as I started out, this is a case where there is no event. And about 60% of the cases under UAP are where there are no events. There is no terrorist act, there is no bomb, there is no arms, nothing. Even then, people remain in jail for 8 years, 10 years. And I would, so apart from the fact that the UAP is structured like that, I would also blame the judiciary for this. Because, I mean, Sai Baba's case, it's very clear. I mean, this issue, which the court came to these conclusions. These conclusions were something obvious, at least on the procedural grounds. The conclusions were obvious. Any judge, even the Sessions Court judge, should have come to this conclusion. Why did he not? Will he be held accountable? No. The police, you continuously say that a person was behind bars for 10 years, nearly 10 years. On the basis of false arrest, on the basis of false seizures, on the basis of false raids, bogus raids. But then, isn't it your duty as a judge? I mean, while I welcome the judgment of the High Court, I would still feel that isn't it the duty of the judge to hold these people to account? Because unless these people who do this, because repeatedly you hear cases in the Supreme Court, in the High Court, Sessions Court, where they blame the prosecution for a washed up investigation. That's fine. But the point is, you watch up the investigation, people are inside for years and years together. 8 years, 10 years, etc., etc. What is the compensation to be paid to them? Nothing, zero. Court doesn't order any compensation. B, what is the accountability of the officers? Nothing. So why should the officers behave any differently next time? Because the mandate to these officers from their powers be is keep this person inside jail for 5, 6, 8 years. Do what you want, keep him inside for 5, 6, 8 years. That's good enough. And that is what is happening. And without accountability, without compensation, without rehabilitation. Yeah. It's fine, we are happy at the end of 10 years that Sai Baba is released. But it's so unfortunate that we are happy at the end of 10 years for the release of a person who should not have been in jail even for a day. And that's the state we have come to. So, just give me a minute. I'm about to, yeah. So, we have to look at, and it's true that Vinayak Sen was a victim of the Congress government. Sai Baba was, at least to begin with, arrested at the time of Congress government, and Congress government was also ruling in state of Maharashtra. So it's not just the central government which was there, it was Prithviraj Chauhan's government which was ruling in Maharashtra, whose police acted. So we have to realize that it was Congress government. The UAPA amendment, the NIA Act, the PMLA Act are all laws which are the brainchild of the Congress government, and more particularly Mr. Chidambaram. At the same time, we should not forget that the weapons which Congress have provided to the BJP have been sharpened, have been used much more effectively from their own point of view for silencing dissent by the present government. And please understand that these arrests, and all of us understand, I guess, all of these arrests, whether it's of Sai Baba, BK16, student activists, journalists, etc., all these arrests are essentially to quell dissent. Any alternate narrative than what the BJP gives is treated as anti-national. UAPA is only one of the laws which is used. There are various other laws. It's also, we have to realize one thing, that it's also a also something which is being used in order to help the corporate giants, whether it's the mining activity, whether they want to build some mines, whether they want to dig into some mines somewhere, whether it's because they want to remove the forest, whether they want to, you know, uh, enter into various other corrupt practices, etc., etc. So it's a whole huge gamut of ecosystem which has been created. Whether surveillance, whether in respect of surveillance, whether in respect of passing these new criminal laws, which now includes actually terrorism as part of the ordinary law. And in fact, once you include it as part of ordinary law, there is no reason for a separate law to exist. But in any event, that exists. My personal view is that laws like UAPA, which are increasingly being used, PMLA increasingly being used, FCRA increasingly being used to cut off various people's finances. Number of these laws, 153A, hate speech, being used against people who give hate speeches. It is not being used against people who give hate speeches against Muslims, but it is being used for innocuous tweets and innocuous Facebook posts for people who may be speaking something against Sanatan Dharma or something like that. It's being used, and these are used not only against dissidents. These are not only used, these laws are used against Muslims, against Dalits, against anybody who has tribals, against anybody who is dissenting. And I think it's time for all of us to rise. There is no question of diluting UAPA or anything like that. I've not gone into, I deliberately did not go much into the various problems of UAPA, etc., etc. But there is no reason for us to demand dilution of UAPA. UAPA has to go lock, stock, and barrel. That's it. Thank you very much.
So please write to them. It's really a breath of fresh air and relief for them to receive these messages. So the postcards are there. Some of them, one poster has been reprinted, one poster, but whoever you can recall, please write postcards and messages for them. Thank you.
After the song, we'll have Sriganga, Sneha, Sri Lakshmi, Shreya, Trisha, and Shashank, who will be doing readings from Professor Saibaba's work. Yeah.
No, we can't do anything.
This is tribute to Michael, Professor Saibab. Not only given the hymn, also we will also give Michael through his song. नहीं रहे इसका गम है पर फिर बिगड़ते जाएंगे रहे कर कमरे आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे तुम नहीं रहे इसका गम है पर फिर बिगड़ते जाएंगे इस जहान के सारे चल पड़े हैं आज तेरी राह पे इस जहान के सारे चल पड़े हैं आज तेरी राह पे चल गए आसमान में काले होके किले के मन में चल गए आसमान में काले होके किले के मन
I can't go there and say that.
अगली सदा एक नया जहां हम बनाएंगे कर कमरे आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे तुम नहीं रहे इसका गम है पर फिर बिगड़ते जाएंगे लाल गले कर कमरे आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे तुम नहीं रहे इसका गम है पर फिर बिगड़ते जाएंगे
I'm not going. I'm cancelling that. 1 minute. Hold on.
इसका गम है फिर बिगड़ते जाएंगे लालच कर कमरे आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे तुम नहीं रहे इसका गम है पर फिर बिगड़ते जाएंगे लालच कर कमरे आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे
After that, Sneha, Srilakshmi, Denzel, is Shreya, Tushar, Shashank. No, because speaker on.
Last time to everyone gathered here. I'm reciting a poem by GN Saibab called A Clarion Call. Armed with bows and arrows, hundreds of that ancient community marched on the banks of the river Nile and blew their clarion call. Who dares to burn a philosopher king on your Dashara? Gleaming under the morning sun, the black diamonds of their muskets and the spotless white turbans outshined the saffron-clad city. They walked on to the heart of their ancient city, as though reclaiming it, and installed their philosopher king, challenging the immoral beauties that molested their king's sister. We have come to accept your call for the war. You choose to begin. But molestation of our king's sister and abduction of your god's wife can no longer be the terms of this war. We are here to take back our lands, forests, mountains, hills, rivers, streams, trees, plants, animals, insects, and our cities. You robbed and occupied for the yours. This was written on 13th September 2017. This was written to Varavar Rao after reading news reports about Mahakambo, a kind of worship of Ravana by Gond Adivasis, performed this year after centuries in Nagpur city. The Gonds declared that no one should burn the effigies of their philosopher King Ravana on Dashera. As per the legend, Nagpur was the capital city of Nishada, Dalits, and the Adivasi kingdom in the classical mythical period. Another anecdote is that Eklavya was given shelter in the city of Nag River when he was witch hunted by Krishna, Drona, and the Pandavas for learning and excelling in archery with his left hand after his right thumb, and which was given to Dronacharya as Guru.
Good evening. I'll also be reciting a poem by Comrade Saibab. It's called A True Story of My Heaven and Hell. This Mahan didn't do anything but a crime against the state, inviting disaffection by smashing a signboard of the future smart city under the intoxication of self-dignity. He was confined under sedition. This Jamar didn't do anything but a crime against the state, inviting disaffection by refusing to clear a dead cow from the future smart city under the intoxication of self-desertion. He was detained under sedition. The hairy magistrate behind the golden high table passed his verdict, banishing the Mahar and the Chamar from the future smart cities for life and afterlife. The Mahar was taken to heaven and the Chamar to hell. Both were entrusted with the holy work of cleaning the shit of gods every morning and evening for life and afterlife. And in the rest of the day, they have to only clean the sewage.
Last everyone. This particular poem by Comrade Saibab is called Bombs Go Astray. And this is particularly relevant in today's time because of the ongoing genocide in Palestine and the Indian government's complicity. Also, complete silence from the Indian middle class and upper middle class on what is happening in Gaza. Bombs go astray. The orphan in the picture has a question. Why did you bomb my mom and dad? A chilling dread pervaded my prison cell. Sleep evaded the torturous nightmarish night of the day the newspaper carried the image of the child writing the question on the rock. Bombs go astray. As often as the street dogs do in the dusty streets of my smart city. The child may be from Syria or Somalia. How does it matter? Each bombed family is a human land with dreams like you and I have. Bombs go astray. Precision bombs go astray precisely, like the appointed election trolls bark on the ugly highways of the social media. The habits of the high-tech wars die. Bombs go astray. Falling from the heavens, anywhere on anybody's head, every patch of the living habitat is a potential war zone. The child may be from Libya or Lebanon. Every child is a human land. War is the most lucrative of all businesses. Bombers love proxy wars and secret militias on the ground. Wars and proxy wars unfold into each other daily. I see no tears of fears in the hidden eyes of the picture. Perhaps she sees the monsters too often. The child may be from Chechnya or Nigeria. The monster grins and grunts, scrambling all over with the deadly trigger buttons in hand. The bombs fall as easy as bird droppings from the sky. The child may be from Palestine or Pakistan. The war zone child has no luxury to weep and wail, unlike you and I, who are armed with Gandhian peace and non-violence, or with Martin Luther King's kind words. Airstrikes strike in hundreds or thousands, even as you and I sip from our cups of peace sitting across the coffee table, or sleep in our restless cozy pillows. We cried foul of war and violence, watching it all on our colorful smart screens with thrill and awe. I fail to read the child's eyes as she stands, her back facing my peace-loving eyes. Through my sleepless night, in my tiny egg-shaped prison cell, the child may be from Kashmir or Yemen. The collateral is the refrain of the eternal war song. A war is declared or undeclared. It's open or secret or sacred. Bombs are counted or uncounted with ground militias or with grand alliances. It's no business to count the casualties of citizens. Liberal democracies fight the most gruesome wars and produce handsome dictators of graffiti. Their face fit beautifully well on the flat screens in our peaceful drawing rooms, where serene incantations of peace flourish with yoga and meditations of 100 denominations. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. War is the most permanent of all businesses of peace. The orphan in the picture has a question. Why did you bomb my mom and dad? Bombs go astray into my dungeon. Sleep evades my prison nights. Comrade GN Saibab on 22nd June 2019. Thank you.
Can you also please read?
Hi, comrades, I'm Stray. I'm going to recite a poem called My Love, My Freedom. It was addressed to his wife, Santa. My love, my freedom. My love, these insults, censors, rumors, oppression, tearing pain and tears, endure a little longer. I know how free your mind and burdenless your thoughts were before this shadow of tyranny took us over. I know how you wear liberty on your black eyelashes and pride of self-dignity on your lovely eyebrows. We will have a life ahead, before which you may forgive me, for dragging you into this shadow. First, they came to steal our freedom. Then, they came to rob us of our courage. We were made helpless, our emotions shackled, love imprisoned, thoughts fettered, and our words chained. Our language is stolen away from us. In this pain of separation and shackled existence, I feel the sound of your helpless, heaving heart. Have a little patience. Our courage alone keeps us alive to a bright breaking dawn. My love, my freedom, raise the burning torch in your hand, little hive. 2nd January 2000.
Aslam and Tushar from Collective. I'm going to read an excerpt from Professor Sai Baba's partner Vasant's letter. And I think it's important to talk about these letters because a few days ago there was another memorial service where Professor Mangopan mentioned how saddened he was that Professor GN Saibab didn't write a diary, a little diary, which is a really important, it's a memento of memory to kind of express what happens in these prisons to hold people accountable years and years later when all of this will be behind. But his partner Vasanta, whose letters reached him very late, he mentioned right after he was released a few months ago from prison. He said he went straight to this press conference to talk about whatever he could before he went to the hospital. Because that is how important memory is. And this is what she says, trying to empathize with what he must feel. And this is how deeply she felt like she was getting involved. The need for her to be with him in these moments of distress. January 2022. My dear, are you feeling dizzy while reading? Are your hands losing their grip? Your hands that lack an ability to grip, do not strain them further. It's all right, you can read the letter later. This brutal government pushed you to such a condition that both of your hands stop work. Many people are not aware of how cruel this so-called democratic government is. Previously, your 2 feet were motionless, but your hands were your strength. Knowing this, the government broke your hands too, reducing you to a helpless state. Among many materials they took away from you, there were tokens of the past, photographs, our future plans, and other precious belongings. They took away the study and teaching material you prepared over the years, study material belonging to our daughter, who was giving her boards. The many photos which I hold and rare photographs of our relatives, friends, and family members, which I preserved as unforgettable trophies. My heart was full of regret and unease at the thought of those lost photographs and the material you collected for writing new books. They picked you up from your car while you were coming back from college. You were taken directly to the airport without informing the family or anyone. There were nearly 20 vehicles with armed commandos aiming their weapons in all directions. They made such a big show of things to give the impression that they had arrested a hardcore, dangerous terrorist, not a handicapped professor. They were making all this fuss to induce fear among the people and give them the impression that you were a traitor. My heart convulsed when you told me how they picked you up from the wheelchair and threw you in that big vehicle as if you were a sandbag. They did not let you urinate for more than 72 hours. They did not provide essential breathing medicines. I was in a state of panic when I learned that you were bleeding from your nose and there was blood bumps all over your head. The police force and commandos did not know how to deal with a differently abled person and handled you very crudely. Your wheelchair got damaged and it took me some months after this incident to get it repaired. I recall your words. Prison is a vicious system. It is a criminal system that transcends even real criminals. Prison is a big, shameful stain on human history. To keep yourself alive is a great struggle here. I'm able to survive here only by recalling my beautiful dreams of love again and again. Every letter that comes from you brings a flood of those memories. I live in your dreams, awaiting your letter. I will constantly dream of the future that we wrote off in our letters 30 years ago. Let me embrace the stacks of our intimate sweet moments on this dark solitary night. Let me play the silent notes of our future dreams, inviting the shining dawn of new victories, my dear. With love, yours, Vasant.
Before reading that, but it's a very long letter. The other one also that isn't that written. I was thinking, we definitely remember Sai Baba for what he has been through in the case of PPP and purpose movement and other things that he was part of. But I think we also have to remember him for being the person where he rose from. Where he rose from and what he became, and yet he was not co-opted or anything like that. So I think that is something really nice of him. I think we can also look at Sai Baba as a very, very committed teacher as well. So many notes, even in fact, Vasanta's letter notes how passionate he was to teach literature. He was so passionate to even take classes to students. Right from his school days, the way he engaged with the ideas of education was so important. I think it could have been exemplary for all of us. I think that is also an interesting facet of Sai Baba. Maybe we can also look at. One more definitely is the fact that how he taught us that even any efforts to overcome our own disabilities has to be linked to how we overcome our own disabilities of the whole humanity. It's not either or it's not very binary. That I think that all these things made him at least very special to me. I heard of him far later than probably all of us here. So I heard of him in 2018 during the students' protest, and ever since then I have felt connected, and I think at least
I did not get to meet him or talk to him ever once. But, I think I have traveled with him. One of the biggest things I also noticed in his poems, if we read them, are the way he keeps going back to Kabir in his poetry collection. That way, he goes back to him as a friend, philosopher, as a guide, as a fighter, and in many various roles he envisions Kabir. So when I heard Sai Baba was not there with us anymore, I felt did Kabir betray Sai Baba? So I still feel he has been betrayed by Kabir. So I had written one small poem as a tribute, so let me read that. Hatching plots time and again, they killed your kid, Kabir, your own kid. You taught the kids to see things as is, to condemn the world and to care for this land and beyond. Treading the path you laid, bound into his chair, this kid laid the Kashmir Valley bare for an international case. So this kid washed it out for Adivasis from Kandahar to Kakula, fighting the corporate loot in forests. They killed your kid, Kabir, your own kid. Hands cuffed and put to rot in the undercell, your kid was even denied a chair to even defecate. And Kumari had to run to courts, Kabir had to run to courts. Your kid, who ought to have rejoiced teaching poetry and prose and dreams being sown, they killed your kid, Kabir, your own kid. They killed your kid, Kabir, who, even in the solitary confinements, refused to die, who found love for life in the sounds of the growing grass. They killed your kid, Kabir, your own kid. Kabir, you who sowed the seeds of love in the heart of this kid, how could you vanish without brooding up the hearts of the merciless? They killed your own kid, Kabir, your own kid, and the saints are love.
Thank you to everybody till now for the poetry recital, as well as for the sharing by both Mihir and Clifton in the beginning part of the program. And I think the challenging or the difficult question is how do you bring both parts together? And we saw the injustice of what happened to Professor Saibaba in terms of the narrative by both Clifton and Mihir. And if you think of justice, I think there are two important components. One is the entire question of reparation. What can we do as far as to repair the situation? In this case, it's very, very difficult because Professor Saibaba is not with us anymore. And second is the entire question of what you say non-recurrence. How does what happened to Professor Saibaba not happen to anybody else? And there I think both our speakers were very, very clear that when you say non-recurrence, one very important dimension of it is the repeat of the UAP. That's very important. I mean, if you're saying justice for Professor Saibaba as an element of what you call non-recurrence, then non-recurrence will demand that we demand that the UAP be repeated, because that's the only way forward in terms of ensuring that there's a form of justice, which is what happened to him does not happen to anybody else. That's one very, very, I think, important dimension. But I think the other important dimension of justice is what all the wonderful poetry which was recited till now is really about, which is justice is also about the question of remembrance. And why is remembrance important? Again, you go back to what Milan Kundera once very eloquently put it. He said the struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. So how do we not forget Professor Saibaba? And that's, I think, the challenge of the invocation, or really the range of poetry which everybody read out till now. And again, remembering Professor Saibaba is in its many dimensions. Shashank brought up the element of him as a teacher. I think the other poetry which is read out is the element of him as a lover. And we must talk about that. I mean, you look at the book of poems, it is an imagination of a wider world. It's also about love for one person, which is Vasanta, which I think Visha brought out as well. And it's about I think three kinds of love. Love for Vasanta, clearly that's very much there. Love for life, which is the second dimension. And the third is the entire thing of love of the world. And how do these three come together as a question of justice? When does love become justice? And I think that's the transition which he really very beautifully makes in his work. Let me try and take you through three poems which look at these three dimensions of his idea of love. His love for Vasanta. There's a beautiful poem called Your Letters Defeat My Solitary Self. I read your letters in the glow of my blood, flowing from the chinks of my fluttering heart in the darkness of feeling, each word conveying a million messages to my hungry mind. Yes, my love, I like your scribbled letters, not the type printouts from the computers. They speak like you, they behave like you, they display the gestures of your hands when you speak. I keep your unwritten letters that escape censorship under my pillowless head. I read them, spreading them on the table of my soul in front of my closed eyes. I defeat the purpose of the solitary confinement by drowning myself in your letters of love. And that's this idea of, again, love for Vasanta, but actually such a love word. It's not just love for Vasanta, right? But it's really, I thought really, really beautiful. For me at least, yeah. I hope you guys thought it as beautiful as it did. The second poem, which is it's called Ode to Life, right? You must love your beloved, but so also love the world. Right? And you must love living. Love, I think Clifton's invocation of the Ikmat one of the love of living, right? Ode to life. But each creature on the earth refuses to die, no matter how insignificant its existence is considered to be by anyone. Each living thing wages a grand resistance against death. My love, life of my life, these days I think of death, I mean about life. I still feel I'm a young student of a learning campus, even after turning 50 and growing grey behind the bars. My love, life of my love, these days I think of death, I mean about life, because I have a pact of love with beauty, I have a pact of blood with my people. Again, I keep saying it's a poem about love of life, but it's also about love of the world. Right? And you see that the last two lines are actually a reference to the poem in Neruda. So again, you see, again, to invoke that. There's a certain way in which Saibaba is in conversation with the world. And I think that's what also keeps him, in a sense, alive. And that's what you need to remember. You need to remember the fact. There's a way in which you're a part of the world. There's a way in which you're in a certain locality, but you also travel the world. And he travels the world. And maybe on that point, let's just read the poem Clifton read part of, which is the Hikmat poem. Again, Hikmat was in prison for over 13 years. And the poem that he wrote is called On Living. Okay? Living is no laughing matter. You must live with great seriousness. Like a squirrel, for example. I mean, without looking for something beyond and above living, I mean, living must be a whole occupation. Living is no laughing matter. You must take it seriously. So much so to such a degree that, for example, your hands tied behind your back to the wall, or else in a laboratory, your white coat and safety glasses, you can die for people. Even for people whose faces you never see. Even though you know living is the most real, the most beautiful thing. I mean, you must take living so seriously that even at 70, for example, you'll plant olive trees. And not for your children either, but because although you fear death, you don't believe it, because living, I mean, weighs heavy. Let's say we're seriously ill, need surgery, which is to say, we might not get up from the white table. Even though it's impossible not to feel sad about going a little too soon, we'll still laugh at the jokes being told, we'll look out of the window to see if it's raining, or we'll still wait anxiously for the latest newscast. Let's say we're at the front, something worth fighting. But say that in the first offensive on that very day, we might fall on our face dead. We know this with a curious angle, but we'll still worry ourselves to death about the outcome of the war which could last years. Let's say we're in prison and close to 50 and have 18 more years say before the iron doors will open. We'll still live with the outside, with its people and animals, struggle and win. I mean with the outside beyond the walls. I mean, however and wherever we are, we must live as if we will never die. This earth will grow cold, a star among stars, and one of the smallest, a gilded mote on blue velvet. I mean, this earth, our great earth, this earth will one day grow cold one day. Not like a block of ice or a dead cloud even, but like an empty walnut. It will roll along in pitch black space. We must grieve for this right now. We have to feel sorrow now. But the world must be loved this much. We're going to say, I live. I'll finally end with one last poem, which is actually one of my favorites, and one of obviously Saibaba's favorites as well, because it's a poem by Pablo Neruda. Actually, 2 poems. Don't mind, I'm going to do 2 poems. Since I'm getting a little carried away at this moment. The Neruda poem, I'm just going to narrate the last couple of lines of it. It goes something like this. If I should die, survive me with a force so pure that you awaken a fury from the pale chill world. Day out, sound your mouth's guitar in all directions, raise your indelible eyes. Again, the idea, right? If somebody dies, you survive them with a force so pure that you awaken a fury from the pale chill world, and day out, sound your mouth's guitar in all directions, you raise your indelible eyes. And I'll end with the last poem, which again is by Hikmat, which is again one of Sai Baba's favorite poems. It's called Angina pectoris, and the point is simply this: Angina pectoris is, of course, a condition of the heart, right? And the story goes like this: Hikmat goes to the doctor, and the doctor says you have a condition called angina pectoris, and that's the point of which the poem arises, right? So it goes this way: Angina pectoris. If half my heart is here, doctor, the other half is in China with the army flowing towards the Yellow River. And every morning, doctor, every morning at sunrise, my heart is shot in Greece. And every night, doctor, when the prisoners are asleep and the infirmary is deserted, my heart stops at a rundown old house in Istanbul. And then after 10 years, all I have to offer my poor people is apples in my hand, doctor, one red apple, my heart. And that, doctor, that is the reason for the angina pectoris. Not nicotine, prison, or arteriosclerosis. I look at the night through the bars, and despite the weight on my chest, my heart still beats with the most distant stars.
We have one more poem. After that, we have a song, and then there is a resolution, draft resolution, which will be shared. And if you all agree, we can adopt that as the resolution of the meeting.
It's difficult to follow up the argument, but this is something that really touched me as a young person who was understanding the human rights movement, who's getting involved in this work, and who's never met Professor Saibaba, and has only understood whatever of him through his words and through his poetry. I really enjoy reading poetry. I think it connects to me more than prescriptive prose does or words do. So, and I found this poem particularly useful for the times we live in, so that we could forge solidarities beyond our individual selves, and we look at ourselves and the egos that we carry in a different light. The poem is called Renounce Your Ego. All lovers, my fellow dreamers, you have given up everything for the sake of love. But why do you weep for the forsaken things? You have left your home and families and every near and dear till you bring victory to the city of love. Still, why do you feel so much anxiety for the smaller things that you lose on this long journey? My dear companions, why don't you renounce your ego and narrowness of mind as well? Kabir, in service of love, says, those who want to reach the city of love should give up ego and arrogance before they begin this journey. I find this extremely remarkable for all of us who want to do this work in the long run, in the ways that we look at ourselves and find, build relationships with others, to be able to look at ourselves with some degree of critique and take forward his idea. Thank you.
Yeah, just 2 seconds. I had attended one stands from his memorial at Catholic Church here, and there was a very clear pillar was going to come. There was not a dry clear anything. Bhaskar Rao, the Miss Commissioner, was there at that time. I remember that so well. I'm only noticing a pattern in the way these people have been, like a cell, like it's an Excel sheet. I pick up this one, I pick up that one, that's what's happening, I find. Most important is all about like Dalton Merkel and his partners. Absolute love and intimacy. At the end of the day, I mean, we're not either because they're all. There's only love in them that I see. So that this study we like kind of a lot. This somebody spoke about Vasanta. My goodness, I've never seen anything more different than that. That is love. Gautam and his partner, that is love. Father stands for me and Smith, that is love also. So, it's just too sad. That's about it.
Thank you for sharing.
We have a song now and then we'll move it.
Chicago, Amar Veera Ratnalli Odeyada. Chicago, Amar Veera Ratnalli Odeyada.
Hi everyone. So, as we've heard today, there has to be some action that needs to come out of the discussions that we're having on the constant targeting and incarceration of activists, Adivasis, Dalits, Muslims, Kashmiris, journalists, because they have spoken out, they have spoken truth to power, or dedicated their lives and work to people's movements with the oppressed communities, with Dalits, Adivasis, religious minorities, and others. By falsely implicating them, unjustly incarcerating them for years, and by putting them through dehumanizing ordeals in prison, the state abuses its power to silence this very work with the oppressed communities. However, as Varavara Rao, Father Stan Swami, Umar Khalid, Sudha Bharadwaj, Professor GN Saibab, and many others have time and again reminded us through their letters, through their poetry, their messages. This is happening because the state is threatened and afraid of anyone who works for the people. The more we challenge the corporate state nexus, the more the state will be afraid of us. The more we oppose Hindutva and hate politics and speak of love, the more the state will silence us. The more we challenge the anti-worker and exploitative status quo, the more the state will target us. The stronger our democratic struggle for Jal Jungle Zameen is, the more the state will falsely implicate us. The more people come together, the more the state will try to alienate us. The louder our voice is, the bigger the hammer that they will bring down. So there is no way forward without more of us pledging to take forward these ideas, the labor and the spirit of those who are being targeted, who are being unjustly incarcerated, who are leading the way through their lives and work about the work that we need to pick up and do with the oppressed communities. For all of us who want to leave behind a world better than the one we live in today, there is no choice but to dismantle such class divisions, to annihilate caste, to protect our forests and ecologies, and to protect our constitutional values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Across the borders of castes, classes, genders, races, and nations, this fight must be for the dignity of every human being. In this fight, we have to continue for our right to fight itself by protecting the democratic fabric with which our constitution was created. For this, as Arvind, Mihir, and Clifton have indicated today, and as activists across the country and the world have been calling for a few years, UAPA must be repealed, the sedition provision in our new criminal laws must be withdrawn, the NIA Act, the PSA, and other draconian laws and provisions must be repealed. So if you are in agreement with this, I urge you to stand up, raise your fists in the air, and pledge the following. We, the people of Karnataka, resolve to continue the struggles and fights for a dignified life for workers, Dalits, Adivasis, religious minorities, and other oppressed communities. We resolve to amplify and sustain the struggles that are being silenced because none of us are free until all of us are free. We resolve to work towards the repeal of UAPA, sedition laws, the PSA, the NIA Act, and other draconian laws. We resolve to ensure that our struggle breathes life into the words and values of the Indian Constitution. Thank you. Please be seated.
İnkılap Zindabad.
Zindabad, zindabad.
United Nations. İnkılap Zindabad.
Long live, long live.
On behalf of Karnataka, UCL, ILAJ, ISAN, the APCR, we thank you all for joining us today. I just want to remind you all once more, we have done this a couple of times. We have mailed these postcards to the political prisoners who are in jail, and this has been a source of incredible strength and solidarity to them. We have listed the photographs and names over there of who are still expecting postcards. So I would urge you, I would invite you to address say who you would want to write to. We'll fill in the cell number in the jail, etc. and leave a message of solidarity. Thank you.